is just fantastic.
Captain's log, subject 211221.4. There is a wing within the ISO cubes that houses inmates that I hate just enough to push for sentences of a diabolical nature. Can anyone guess the crime? 2 things before we begin. Firstly, trigger warning. The subject we're going to cover today is quite dark. You have been warned. Second, you will notice that my voice does not sound like it does in other videos. That is because this was recorded during a week of recovery at the tail end of November. But to be honest, as I can go deeper and sound slightly angrier, which in the context of this particular story I'm okay with, I think we'll leave this one in. So welcome everyone to the halls of injustice. Today we welcome inmate number 107 to the ISO cubes. Her name is Katie Louise Oldridge. Katie Louise Oldridge is a 35-year-old dosser from Hull who had for a lengthy period of time a dog, a Staffie, beautiful Staffie I'm sure, called Frank. Now I can't show you any pictures of Frank because Frank is the victim here, and there are pictures. They're linked in all the articles I've put in the pinned comment down below, but at no point does Frank appear alive. So you have yet again been warned. Between April 10th and May 14th of 2020, so during the height of the very first UK lockdown, Katie Louise Oldridge disappeared, abandoned her home, and by extension, Frank. Frank had been left with a tin of dog food and a water bowl in the kitchen, which he was not able to get out of because there was a child gate preventing him from moving anywhere else. An RSPCA investigator, Gilly Dickinson, led an investigation for the RSPCA and said that the kitchen door had a baby gate in the frame. I found a dog food tin on the kitchen worktop, which contained mouldy remains of food in the bottom of it, and an empty box of dog treats, which appeared to contain feces. There was an overwhelming smell of feces and decomposing flesh in the property. Because Frank is evidence, and we treat animals differently to that of humans, Frank had to be placed into an RSPCA evidence bag, where a large quantity of live creatures of various sizes dropped from Frank's head. He was thin, and you can in all the photos see every single bone in his body. Staffies are lovely dogs, by the way. If you don't know what a Staffie is, they are loyal, energetic, they look brutal, but they are kind. They are fun, good with kids, playful, great as a team. More than one, happiest dogs you'll ever find. And also as an added bonus, unlike other dogs, they don't molt. Well, if they do, they don't molt as much, which means less hoovering, which is a big win, I'm just gonna say. The investigation into Katie Louise Oldridge did find that the level of emaciation coupled with the ingestion of foreign materials suggested that he felt hunger and ate anything he could try and offset that feeling. Desperation, no doubt. The lack of fat and muscle tissue found on Frank suggested that his body had used up its internal energy resources rather than having adequate nutrition provided, which means also that his basic needs had not been met anyway, and that he had suffered as a result. I'm going to insert this disclaimer now. When it comes to animals and their suffering, and humans and their suffering, my view is always going to be the same. Neglect on a human is punished quite severely. I would expect the same for a dog, cat, in fact any pet, because I really don't care for animal abuse at all. In the UK, we have what we call parity of esteem in the medical field, where you treat physical illnesses and mental illnesses the same. I personally here do the same with anyone that mistreats an animal as that of mistreating another person. And I'm going to insert this comment now. I mentioned that we were at the height of a lockdown. Flights were cancelled. So where on earth had you, Katie Louise Oldridge, gone? This, by the way, implies that this was all entirely deliberate, which is 100% unacceptable. Then again, There is no version of any outcome or incident or context where it is acceptable to leave an animal alone for 34 days. And you know it. During mitigation, because obviously this did go to trial, Oldridge had indicated that she had a problem, a personal problem, and this context led her down a path that made her dependent on alcohol, which apparently is the ace in the hole defense for what you did. I will never look down on another person's suffering, but when your suffering causes others to suffer, I take great issue. During lockdown, many people got pets, and since lockdowns are starting to end or are ended or have ended or going back in or blah blah blah, many people have gotten rid of those dogs because they're disgusting people who didn't think things through. Katie Louise Oldridge was, by the court because of her guilty plea, found guilty of 2 animal welfare offences that are not, in any article I've linked, specified. So with that, we come to a sentence. I'm going to preface this with the following. The UK government had at one point indicated they were going to introduce harsher sentences, custodial sentences no less, for animal rights violations. So the sentences for Katie Louise Oldridge read as follows. 18 weeks in prison, suspended for 2 years, 200 hours of community service, 12 rehab activity requirement days, £300 in costs, a £128 surcharge, along with being banned from owning animals for life, which in 10 years she can in fact contest. Which does in fact sound like a lot, doesn't it? But to me that sounds like nothing, because the custodial sentence should be a custodial sentence, regardless of her guilty plea or lack of convictions, because again, here at the Halls of Injustice, we're dicks. And we turn that 18 weeks, by the way, into 18 years. But I do think it right that we now reference the UK law. So for example, the animal welfare offences are derived from the Animal Welfare Act of 2007. This was the first review of pet law in 94 years, with it replacing the Protection of Animals Act, which was first passed in 1911 and designed to prevent outright cruelty to animals. This act combined more than 20 pieces of legislation into one, with it at the time introducing penalties for neglect, cruelty, fines up to £20,000, a maximum jail term of 51 weeks, a lifetime ban on some owners from owning pets. Enforcers like the RSPCA were then granted more powers to intervene if they suspect a pet is being neglected. It also introduced a welfare offence for the first time. This places a duty of care on pet owners to provide for their animals' basic needs, which included food, water, veterinary treatment, appropriate environment in which to live. I vaguely knew of this because when I had rats at university, you had to have a cage of a certain size, a habitat. So I bought a chinchilla one, because it was bigger, more layers, more levels. My 2 rats, JD and Turk, loved it. The Act also raised the age from 12 to 16, which was the minimum age for buying a pet, or winning one as a prize without parental accompaniment. So in the context of the crime committed by Katie Louise Oldridge, she was given the sentence appropriate to that of what the rules state. But I would also add, we can also reference the revised 2017 Animal Cruelty Sentencing Guidelines, which have a fine and up to 26 weeks custody. So again, her sentence falls within this quite handily. And because they accept in the court that she is guilty of intentional neglect, the ban on her is justified because of that. But I still don't agree with it. So I will ask you all, F for Frank in the comments. Katie Louise Oldridge, you belong in this cell. Your sentence from me, 18 years. Which, at a push, is the life of a dog. Grats. Enjoy your time here, you deserve it. You won't have to worry about your, dependencies. We'll flush those right out. Now as we're done, I'd like to know what you all think, so please do let me know in the comments down below. I hope you'll have a fantastic day. Do rest in peace, Frank. You suck, Katie Louise Oldridge, And thank you all very much for listening.